evening. You're watching The Last Word. I'm Avni Raja, and we're just 2 days away from U.S. President Donald Trump's and First Lady Melania Trump's visit to India. India is leaving no stone unturned to ensure it's a memorable visit for the U.S. President. In fact, as per the latest developments, President and the First Lady will be accompanied by daughter Ivanka and her husband Jared Kushner, both of whom are advisors to Trump. The U.S. delegation will also include Commerce Secretary, Energy Secretary and the White House Chief of Staff. Now, this entire visit is extremely high on optics, with all the arrangements being made and a repeat of the Howdy Modi kind of event that we saw in Houston last year. And once again, we are likely to see the bonhomie between PM Modi and President Trump on full display. But beyond the optics, this visit comes amidst increasing trade tensions between India and US, and perhaps issues that will need a resolution sooner rather than later. So what are the tangible outcomes that we're likely to see that are going to come out of this visit? That's the discussion that we're going to have today. But before I welcome my guests, take a look at some of the comments that Trump has made recently and also what the External Affairs Ministry had to say.
On India not treating US well, I think it is important to understand the context under which these remarks were made. Please understand that US is India's largest trading partner in goods and services if we take and combine. Please also do keep in mind that there has been a consistent growth in trade between the two countries over the last few years. I think the context was in terms of the balance of trade, and in that context the remarks were made. You are also aware that in the last few years efforts have been taken by India to address this particular concern, and now US is our sixth largest source of crude oil imports, and we are also purchasing a large number of civilian aircrafts, and we do feel that some of these steps will kind of bridge the trade deficit which exists at this point of time.
Great new trade deals like we've been doing. I'm going to India next week, and we're talking trade. They've been hitting us very hard for many, many years, but I really like Prime Minister Modi. We got to talk a little business. They've been hitting us hard. They give us tariffs. One of the highest in the world is India. But I hear they're going to have 10 million people. They say anywhere from 6 to 10 million people are going to be showing up along the route to one of the largest.
Well, let me welcome my panel who's joining in tonight. Smita Sharma, senior journalist who works on foreign policy, is with us. Manu Pavi, senior editor of the Economic Times. Dr. V. Rangaraj, founder, chairman, U.S.-India Business Council, and Vishnu Prakash, former ambassador, so with us. I'd like to thank all of you for joining us on this discussion today. Smita Sharma, let me start with you, because obviously we're now just 2 days away from the President Trump coming to India, and we've seen on two different occasions him making it absolutely clear that he's not happy with the way India, the entire trade issues, some of these issues, the tariff issue. He also made it very clear that there's not going to be any trade deal this time. So just in the context of him coming to India and the timing of these comments, what do you have to say?
Well, I guess we have to relate it, at the end of the day, to Donald Trump's personal style. He is a man who knows to not really be politically correct most of the times. He can be very unpredictable. He also knows that playing the victim card works for him in terms of his domestic political narrative. But there are two things here. I think, first of all, when you look at Donald Trump's statements on trade, yes, there is a growing frustration in Washington, D.C. Without a doubt, over the past 2 years, it's grown, and particularly over the past 8 months, as you've seen these negotiations happen back and forth. We have been listening into the inside stories, how the negotiations over a limited trade deal on goods, not on services, has been stuck on issues of animal, dairy, farm products, on medical, in fact, devices, especially the coronary stents, or also in terms of the US seeking a level playing ground when it comes to the India's, in fact, paying mechanism of RuPay, which India is not interested in, because it says that if you bring in MasterCard and Visa at this point in time, the RuPay hasn't even found its feet really, and it will be grounded. But, in Washington, D.C., that increasing suspicion that New Delhi is playing the game of being a stalling partner again, that on the face face of it, it wants to engage, it wants to be seen as being keen on trying to deliver home a trade deal, but perhaps behind the scene, happy with the fact that the deal is not coming through. In New Delhi, the argument is that, look, this trade deal, of course, will benefit America because they are looking at lower concessions, lower tariffs, and a greater market access. But at the end of the day, knowing Donald Trump, I think the fact that he did not make his visit conditional upon a trade deal happening, that he is, regardless of that, regardless of all the statements, of all the controversial remarks that he keeps making is actually finally embarking upon that long journey. He hates long journeys, but he's still coming to India for a 36-hour visit with his family, including Ivanka and his son-in-law and presidential advisor Jared Kushner. I think that shows that he's actually sort of invested in the political premium of this relationship at this point in time and not narrowing it down simply to the friction on trade, which is serious, which is a disappointment, a trade deal not happening, but both sides treating it that this is definitely not a setback.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, let me go across to Dr. Rangraj here. The issues with the trade talks that India and U.S. have been having are obviously completely out in the open, and there are some extremely sticky issues as well that we were just talking about. But the question here is, how difficult do you think it's going to be to actually resolve these issues?
Broadly, when you see the parameters of Indo-U.S. relations, trade issues have been there since quite some time. But these trade issues are such a minuscule. For example, there has to be a lot of give and take from both sides. That is how the world trade system is now evolving today. The most important thing is to concentrate is to focus more on defense, technology, and trade. If you take care of defense and technology, trade will automatically take care of it. They are just asking for some small things like apples to be sent, almonds to be sent. Let's be accommodative there. On the issue of the dairy product, food product, certainly it's a very sensitive area. Indian government has to be extremely careful in that segment. But otherwise, I think we should move ahead in those areas where we feel we can give them little and take some from them.
Okay. Ambassador Prakash, if I can come to you here in terms of, of course, Donald Trump has made very clear here that there's going to be no big deal announcement at this point of time. But do you think that we could see some small limited deal kind of thing being announced to sort of show that there has been some forward movement, more in terms of a messaging to send across rather than anything else actually tangible?
As I understand, there is going to be
what I hear, what I see, I'm
some good
enjoying
moves
that.
in the area of.
Sorry, that question was for Vishnu Prakash.
Well, as I said, what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing, I'm enjoying it. This is very often it happens that before a visit, you play to the galleries, you try to jostle for the best outcome, you take a maximalist position, and you try to lower the expectations. So a bit of everything is at play as far as I'm concerned. Whether the deal is, whether we see a deal, at the moment, it's not very likely, but I will not be surprised if at the last minute some gestures are made, the principals get into the act and say that, look, in the larger interest of the relationship, we are going to do this, that, and it's projected as a dramatic breakthrough. But even if that does not happen, look at the trade. We were about $16 billion some 15 years ago. We are close to $150 billion. The trade gap is narrowing. We are, as was mentioned by you, we are importing hydrocarbon products in a larger quantity. And as the relationship, as the trade grows, I'm very confident that, while you can never match dollar for dollar and cent for cent, the gap is minuscule. But overall, if we look at the picture, I think we are very much into the positive territory. These are niggles, as I call it. I don't think it's a deal breaker. I don't think that it is going to be a spoiler. But yes, the sooner we get this niggle out of the way, the better, because this relationship is a very important relationship. And the relationship over the last 20 years has been transformed. There is a strategic content, there are other dimensions, and both sides are invested in the relationship.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. In fact, Manu Bhabi, one thing we might see, and which has been on the cards and is being talked about, is on the defense front. What is your own expectation? Because aside from the $3 billion deal for the helicopters, there's also other things that are on the cards. What is your own assessment of what we could see there?
So if you delink the trade deal from President Trump's visit, there's a lot there. So the defense deal is one thing, the $3 or $2.6 billion deal for naval helicopters. But look at what's been talked about prior to the visit. The Indian government is conveying how close we are to the U.S. in terms of training, in terms of military to military training. The U.S. is India's largest partners when it comes to naval, air force, and army engagements. We are actually exercising together in contentious areas. We have the Malabar series of exercises in the South China Sea. We do share intelligence. A lot of tracking of, say, Chinese ships in the Indian Ocean region is done jointly now. And look at the platforms that we are using. They're all, several of them are American origin. And beyond what is going on right now, I think there are at least 6-7 big deals which are in the pipeline. They can get signed maybe in the next few weeks, maybe the next few months, but they're strategic ones. Look at what's on the table. One is a security system, a national air defense missile system for the capital of India, which is an ASMIS, which has already got cleared from the US side. Now it will be negotiated and signed. A very critical system. It places the security of a national capital at stake, and it also gives you a cover which perhaps nothing else can give you. It's a very efficient system. Other than that, you have orders for additional Apache helicopters which are coming up. Then you have a very critical naval guns which have to go on our next generation destroyers and frigates, which are being imported from the US. And remember, all the deals from the US are coming through the FMS route, which is a government-to-government line, foreign military sales. And that seems to be a preferred route for India and the US. We have had $18 billion worth of deals already, at least $10 billion more on the pipeline. So just as India is diversifying its a basket for oil and natural gas, I think we're also doing it for defense equipment. And the US has been the new partner there. A lot of the technology that they offer is very interesting. But where we are lacking right now, I think that's where the both sides need to sit down and work. The only way to take it up to the next level is by sharing technology. And that is one area in which the US has not been able to match up to our expectations. So though we have a joint working groups on technology sharing, they still have not been able to do that. So our joint operations and our aspirations don't still match up to, say, what's happening on the ground in terms of joint development and technology sharing. So I think that's something which needs a breakthrough to happen soon.
Right. Right, absolutely. Now, the other aspect that I really want to focus here is, and that we were just talking about as well, is what's going to be in all of this for India? Because we know that for President Trump, there's a lot that he has to take away from this. Obviously, he's making this long trip. President Trump is not the kind of person who would take that extra effort unless he's getting enough in return from it. He has his election, the presidential election also coming up, the defense deals also that we were just talking about. So in fact, Smita Sharma, I want to come to you here. What is going to come out of this for India?
Look, I think there are those short-term deliverables and there is a long-term strategic goal here which one needs to not lose focus of. The way the India-US relationships have evolved and transformed significantly to becoming a very, very important partnership today for India and for US likewise, be it in the Afghan-Pakistan region or be it in the Indo-Pacific, where, today you have the Indians and the Americans actually tracking the Chinese movement in the waters together through American, in fact, equipments as well. But in terms of the deliverables here, while India at the moment is very concerned about being left, being taken out of the GSP list. India has been seeking a full restoration of being back into the generalized system of preferences. And on the contrary, in fact, just last week, just ahead of the visit, we saw US put India into the category of the developed nations. That means that it will not be getting in some preferential treatment in certain areas. That's a worry area for India. India is hoping that, if required, it was willing, according to sources, to import goods worth almost $6.5 billion to be back into the GSP list. So India does want a trade deal, but India wants it on better terms, because we saw a senior Indian government official, in fact, just yesterday argue that India is being put to higher standards, which is not fair, that even countries, developed nations like Japan to Korea, actually have higher tariffs in certain areas compared to India. Secondly, I think India's worry right now is, look, that Make in India that Narendra Modi has been giving in as a slogan, if Donald Trump has a protectionist slogan and has a re-election coming up, the Indian Prime Minister, who has just come back with a decisive mandate in the second term, he also needs to create jobs. Employment, that is a huge area of concern right now with the kind of negative downturn to the economic scenario that we are looking at. So how to increase the private sector partnerships, how to get in foreign investments. These are areas where the Indian government thinks that it needs to give a push. So be it in the area of civil nuclear commerce, be it in the area of defense technology transfer. And politically, let's not lose sight, Avni. I mean, while we are talking about defense, energy, security, and all these areas, the entire significance should not be lost on anybody. Donald Trump would not have undertaken this kind of a standalone trip a few months to go with elections to any other country. He knows that in India, whether he goes to Gujarat or Punjab, people will come out on the streets to welcome him and to cheer him. He might not have that popularity elsewhere. And for Narendra Modi, Prime Minister Modi himself, it's a boost in the arm, this visit coming at a time when his government has been doing so much of firefighting on the external stage, trying to explain the internal actions on Kashmir CAA to the international players. So here is a US president who comes in, who shakes hand, who says, I really like Prime Minister Modi. It is a personal boost for the government here as well.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, just taking the point that you were mentioning earlier ahead to Dr. Angraj here, with respect to, what else India can really get out of it, the fact that China is in the situation it is today with the coronavirus outbreak, is that something that perhaps can be used to our advantage and perhaps push for greater exports to the US given the current situation? Dr. Angraj?
Can't hear.
All right, we'll yes, just try and get that audio sorted.
Can't hear.
Let me go across to Ambassador Prakash here.
Now I can hear. Now I can hear you.
All right, Dr. Angraj, let me repeat my question. My question was with respect to what's in it for India, and another way that India can perhaps benefit from this is perhaps to take advantage of the situation today that China is in given the coronavirus outbreak, and perhaps push for higher exports to US.
The line is getting cut.
All right, we'll try and get that sorted. Ambassador Prakash, if you heard that question, same question to you.
Yes, I did. I did. I would want to look at the big picture. Trade is an important element. Certainly, it's an important element, but it is one of the elements of the relationship. Nothing more, nothing less. The big picture is the strategic content in the relationship. It is basically the power balance. It is how equations have changed. Now, when you ask what is it for us, let us look at some other landmarks. March 2000, Bill Clinton came to India when we were under sanctions. That visit happened after 22 years. The very fact that Bill Clinton came to India for 5 days was taken notice everywhere. What was good for America was good for the rest of the world. And Bill Clinton's arrival started the process of sanctions being taken off. Let's fast forward to September 2008. If we got the NSG waiver, it is because of one country and one man, and that is USA and Bush. Without that, I can say with confidence that it would have been very difficult to get NSG waiver. They did not ask what was in for them. 2010, Obama comes and promises that US will support us for the UN Security Council membership, permanent membership of the UN Security Council. So you will see, I can go on, but what I'm driving at is that it is a relationship which has become much bigger than counting dollars and cents. There is give and take so that we can build this relationship. And both sides have invested a lot of political capital in this. What we'll get this time out of it is two things. One, it is a process of continuum because relationship building is a process, and it will dramatically advance the relationship because there is a cross-party consensus in both the countries to build the relationship. Secondly, President Trump, who was mentioned by one of my co-panelists, who does not like travel, comes all the way to India for 36 hours. Now, this is something that will be taken note by all our neighbors in particular and outside. It strengthens the status or enhances the status of India, enhances the leverage of India. And there are indications that there will be some vision document about the Indo-Pacific construct. So I would like to conclude here by saying that it's a very big relationship. It's a preeminent relationship that we have. And we should go slightly beyond counting dollars and cents every time that the two leaders meet.
Okay. All right. Dr. Rangraj, if you can, my voice is reaching you now. You know, the question essentially was about what is in this entire visit, what is India really going to get out of this?
Now, India, as Ambassador explained just now, India is going to get a high esteem in the eyes of other world leaders, and India is going to go several steps further in enhancing its relationship with the U.S. This is also going to give a handle to India to bargain better. Now that it has given so much of defense deals and so many other things, India can bargain better for the H-1B visa issue. India can bargain better for reinstatement of the GST. So many things are going to happen arising out of this. And I would say that this relationship is the 21st century defining relationship. And this is a relationship which is going to endure the two great democracies in the larger interest of world peace and world order.
All right, we'll have to, of course, wait and see finally what tangible, outcomes come out of this. But Manu Pabi, coming to you, the other aspect, what you were talking about, as far as the F-21 jet deal is concerned, that is something that, of course, the U.S. is pushing for India to evaluate. How do you assess that whole thing? Would that be something that India should move towards?
Yeah, but I just want to come to a point which was raised earlier. What is in it for India? I think if you go beyond the strategic outlook and trade, I think it's very important that you have people-to-people connect. And the reason Trump is coming to India is because the Indian diaspora in the US is important to Trump. And we should remember that. So a lot of people criticize this road show plan for Trump. But it is also, in a sense, a display of the importance of Indian people and India in the US political system. So that's one more thing. But coming to defense, yes, there is, the American side is keen to push an offer for either the F-21 or the F-18 for an Indian program. It would be, while it is a very ambitious program, we have never had a program of such, of such depth with the Americans. Because remember, in this program, the aircraft have to be made in India under transfer of technology. And as we have seen in the past, there have been limitations because of US law on how much they can transfer to us. They have a lot of very strict laws on transfer of critical technologies. So it's going to be difficult. So of course they are keen on it, but I would be surprised if there is a forward movement on that. But there are several other things that they can do. For example, they're trying to push the F-18, one of their fighters, for the Navy. The Navy is a requirement for carrier jets. So that could possibly come through. But yes, there is a feeling, if you talk to the industry, if you talk to diplomats, or if you talk to bureaucrats in India, that for India and the US to take one step forward on defense technology, you need one big project. Now, the consensus has to be built on what is that one big project. So the fighter jet program is definitely that one big project. But as I said, the challenges on tech transfer have to be addressed by the US side more than we can do anything about it.
Yes, absolutely. All right, Smita Sharma, the other question that I really had is, do you expect Kashmir to sort of make its way into this, into conversation here in the talks between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump?
Well, at least New Delhi is hoping that this is an issue that will not figure in the exchanges. But Avni, I wish I was a fly on the wall when these talks happen. Ambassador Vishnu Prakash has had his fair share of being, in fact, a witness to these conversations, which are often projected to media as the candid talks that are happening. But, Trump is Trump. I mean, one day he wakes up and he says that, oh, I love Imran Khan. The second day he says that I love Narendra Modi. And then, of course, his expectation of the crowds in Gujarat lining up to see him has gone up in the last 48 hours from 7 million to 10 million. So New Delhi would hope that they had some sort of a remote to control, that he wouldn't come out with the K word, it wouldn't be the Kashmir word. But I think that's a wishful thinking. But in terms of Kashmir coming up as an issue, will Donald Trump personally raise it? It's not like a Barack Obama kind of a visit, where remember Barack Obama, when he was here and he had this interaction, a town hall kind of interaction in City Fort Auditorium, I remember, where he did speak something about religious freedom, about the process of inclusivity. Donald Trump clearly, if Narendra Modi says that I am a Gujarati and business is in my DNA, here in Donald Trump, you have a former reality TV star, a billionaire mogul, who is interested clearly in that Make American Great Again or MAGA slogan at the moment, where he has to go back into that campaign mode, and where he has to sell that, look, I made the Indians also fall in line on trade, just like I went and sort of revised that trade deal with Canada, with Mexico. I got a phase 1 deal with China. So I think Kashmir, CAA, while these are issues, remember the U.S. Congress, which works almost like, on its own and not necessarily aligned with the administration in White House. In the U.S. Congress, there's still a lot of firefighting that the Indian government has to do. Their resolutions that are coming up in these conversations in Hyderabad House, even if the issue comes up, it's not going to cast a shadow, is what we can hope. But what Donald Trump says is anybody's guess, really, at the moment. So, which is why perhaps he's not taking, at least the two leaders are not taking any questions in Hyderabad House after the joint press remarks. He may actually interact with the American press on the side when he goes in to Roosevelt House later in the day on 25th of February.
Yes, absolutely. That is something that, unfortunate that there won't be any question and answer. But Ambassador Prakash, just taking the same point forward there, the fact that Donald Trump is somebody who speaks his mind, he's never hesitated from saying what he thinks, whether it may be right or not. And he has brought up Kashmir on more than one occasions earlier, despite knowing that India wants no interference on that front. If he does not bring it up voluntarily on his own, then that would, of course, be sort of, would it be wrong to deem that as a victory of sorts for India?
President Donald Trump has a very interesting style of functioning. He has thrown all the established diplomatic paradigms out of the window. He says what he wants to say, but it is also for effect. Now, when he is on the soil of a country, and I have been following his visit to other countries also, he is very mindful of the sensitivities of the country. I do not see him doing or saying anything which will embarrass his host. I don't see that happening. And we should also, I would like to reiterate here, that while the U.S., the Democrats basically in the U.S. Congress, some of them have been saying things partly because of their own compulsions, the White House has generally been supportive. And especially last year when we had the Fulbama incident, when we had Balakot, they were very, very supportive. And if I were to just take a minute to comment on the road show, the idea is to put up an extravaganza, likes of which President Trump would never have seen before, would never see after. After all, we are unique in that there is no country in the world which has such a rich cultural heritage, and the might of Indian soft power will be a display, and that's certainly because relationships are as much about interest as they are about personalities. And I think we will win over the hearts, so to say. I don't like the word heart, but at least it will cause an impression on the First Lady and President Trump, which will be lasting for a long, long time.
The other issue, Dr. Angraj, if I can come to you here, which, even the opposition parties here have brought up, is with respect to the H-1B visas and the issues that currently are going on, and whether or not that will be taken up, or some sort of indications that, that could perhaps there would be some forward movement in trying to resolve that. All right. Dr. Angraj, am I audible? All right.
Yeah.
I think we seem to have lost that line.
Now I can hear you.
You can, all right. All right, Dr. Angraj, my question was about the H-1B visas and, the issue that even the opposition parties here have brought up. Do you think that we're going to see any movement on that front?
See, as I see, the trump card which the Indian government may play is that the amount of Indian investments which are going into United States now is likely to increase further. For example, there are certain industrial groups here in Bombay who are going to invest close to $2 billion in the US. Now, they should know if they can keep this as a bargaining tool with the US president, and the number of jobs which have been created in the US by Indian corporate sector is something about which we can talk to them. And we have done a good job in that area. For example, one company, I can say, which belongs to the Birla Group, they have more than 7 plants in the US. They are employing close to 40 to 50,000 people in the US in one company. Similarly, the Tatas, similarly, Bharat Forge, Mahindra and Mahindra. If you put all these things, you get a very good bargaining handle to talk to President Trump. And I'm sure the US government will take note of this, the increasing investments into the United States. And that is why they are going to organize the Invest USA campaign sometime end of January. That's going to be a very big event in the US, and Indian companies are going to take part. So I feel that in the H-1B visa area, I foresee some movement, at least enlarging the scope or reducing the time to get a green card. All these things will follow. That's what I understand.
Right. Smita Sharma, same question to you in that what do you think it will take to see some sort of movement? What kind of a resolution could perhaps be looked at, or that would be acceptable to both sides?
Look, I think this is an issue that is actually going to be handled more at the technical, the bureaucratic levels and the ministerial levels. The 2+2 institutional dialogue mechanism that is taking place between the defense and the foreign ministers on both sides. This is not really an issue. It may be reflected as a matter of the joint statement. There will be, in fact, some stress given by Prime Minister Modi in his opening remarks when he makes those media remarks in Hyderabad House, talking about the Indian contribution to the building of America as a society, America as a country today, be it the 7 million strong, in fact, Indian diaspora, the 1 million strong NRI base, or of course, the Indians who are working there, the Indian CEOs who are generating jobs through companies in America, who in fact are going to have a meeting with Donald Trump. So I think these are issues where one should not be expecting a resolution to be coming through in this round of the visit, but it's something that will be reflected in the joint statement and will continue to be a subject of deliberations in the 2+2 or in the other formats of dialogue.
All right. Ambassador Prakash, you wanted to comment. Please go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to mention here that my take is that this being an election year, we may not see much movement in this, because this is one of the platforms of President Trump. And we have been talking about the H-1B visa issue with them, but we have not been highlighting it. There is no point highlighting it. I would think that there will be a positive resolution, but it will be done quietly, discreetly. As Smita said, we may not see much of a resolution here at this juncture. But also, let's not forget that the Indian community has come of age in USA. They have the heft, they have the clout. And if President Trump is wanting to engage with the Indian community, which he is, and that is one of the reasons he is addressing the community in Ahmedabad, I think they will also quietly reach out to the White House, to the president, and government to government also it's being done. So I would expect a resolution, but maybe we'll have to wait a little till the elections get over.
Okay. All right. So the other point, running out of time, but the other point here is, of course, that Smita Sharma mentioned a short while back that I want to come back to, is about the optics of all of this, because that is the one area where this visit is extremely high on optics. So Manu Pabi, let me start with you here. From the perspective of the kind of perception that this is going to create for Donald Trump in US, considering that this is an election year for him and his choice of India, his choice of Gujarat, obviously targeting the Indian American community in the US as well. What is your sense of it all?
No, it is totally oriented towards the elections coming up, and the reason that he's doing the first ever standalone visit by a US president to India, he's coming only to visit India, he's going to go back to the US. So that shows again how important the Indian thinking is, how important issues which are core to India are to, say, even the US president. The one reason why I probably think that Kashmir may not be mentioned is because he would not want to upset the significant chunk of Indian origin voters back in the US as well. So that does show that, important issues to India will be taken seriously within the US political system. That's a great advantage to have for India. It gives you an edge over everyone in the neighborhood. It can give you benefits which other countries will not get. And so you have to see this in the context. It's not just optics. It's not about 28 stages. It's not about the stadium and how many million people. It's the fact that this is important to him, and that's the reason India is going out of its way to make sure he gets the welcome that he wants. He likes all this pomp and show, but it reflects again, as I would say, the importance of India in the US, and that's because of our strong diaspora there, our business interests. And a lot of affiliation is still there with people who have gone maybe even a generation or two past to the US.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, Ambassador Prakash, the bonhomie between both the leaders, the camaraderie that we saw at the Howdy Modi event, obviously here is after that kind of an event, the massive performances, the entire way the entire thing was done, obviously there's going to be that feeling of reciprocation from India's end as well.
And very much so. And, it does not fail to impress a visitor. I remember the visuals when Prime Minister Shinzo Abe came, and they were all in an open jeep, the wife of Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, PM Modi and Shinzo Abe. And I cannot believe it, having served in Japan and having following the country, they are very reserved in public. And here was Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's wife was so excited to see the spectacle that she saw. She was clicking away to glory. I mean, imagine millions of people cheering President Trump. Imagine India with the full display of Indian colors, the vibration, the cultural might of India. I think, and we will also perhaps see that in the election campaign of President Trump, these visuals will be shown again and again and again.
Yes,
so I think India will leave a deep imprint on President Trump, and that is also one of the purposes.
Yes, absolutely. And Smita Sharma, given all of this, given all of these optics, given everything that we've seen at the Howdy Modi event and that we'll probably see today, in next week at the Namaste Trump event as well, the fact that Donald Trump came out days before that, made comments like India doesn't really like us and, going all out to talk about the trade problems in the open, I guess I don't think another president would have said something like that in the first place.
I think, New Delhi has sort of decided that this is an important relationship. And so if there is a difficult president that you need to work along with, then they will choose to ignore some of his statements and perhaps harp on some of the favorable ones. And it's interesting to see this entire evolution, Avni, because in 2017, I remember in June, I was in the Rose Garden in White House where Prime Minister Modi had traveled to meet Donald Trump for the first time. There was an intense amount of tension playing around in the Ministry of External Affairs officials, and the fact that Donald Trump actually chose to just stick to the protocol that had been set out for him. People in the Indian side of the ministry were actually breathing much easy after that press conference, where we did not know whether there would be an awkward hug or a handshake. And in 2018, if you remember, we saw India trying to do a reset with be it Russian President Vladimir Putin or Chinese President Xi Jinping following Doklam. There was a feeling that perhaps Donald Trump was completely occupied with Chairman Kim Jong-un of North Korea, or the Russian story or the Iranian crisis. But again, in the last couple of months now, we have seen the story, sort of the bilateral engagements, get the necessary political push that two democracies would prefer and like to see. And that's what is playing out. So the political significance also for, again, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, the fact that, today, as Chief Minister of Gujarat, he was pariah to the United States for several years.
Yes.
That broke, of course, when he went in after his election victory as Prime Minister to the U.S. in 2014. And today, finally, you have a U.S. president who is arriving straight away in Ahmedabad. Air Force Carrier 1 is landing in Ahmedabad. Then he's heading to Agra, where you'll see a family photo with Ivanka Trump, with the floaters, the First Lady, with Jared Kushner, something that is not on display with Donald Trump in many other countries. So this goes down well for Prime Minister Modi also with his own domestic constituency.
Yes, absolutely. All right, just get very quickly closing comments from all of you. Let me start with Dr. Rangraj here. What would you ideally like to see coming out of this visit? If you can just mention the 1 or 2 points that you would ideally like to see.
I would ideally like to see India and United States not coming merely closer on the defense area, but trying to settle their trade deals in an amicable, statesman-like manner so that free trade flows and the current trade level of $142 billion, the two-way trade, should reach $500 billion at least in the next 5 years. That is my dream as a trade specialist.
Okay, all right. Manu Pabi, what about you?
I would like to see that you transfer technology, you find ways to get closer, take the next step. You already are exercising together, you're operating together. The next step, very natural next step, is to co-develop weapon systems, to export to third countries, to share technology. And I hope that happens and the right push is given towards that.
All right, Ambassador Prakash.
The beauty of this relationship is that from a country which has imposed sanctions on us, which has denied us technology, we are today the major defense partner. We have moved at a pace and in a manner that is what would have been unthinkable 20 years ago. And I'm very confident that this phase will continue because it is in the long-term interest of both the countries. And the oldest democracy and the largest democracy, I think working together is a win-win proposition for both countries. And I'm very confident this will happen.
All right. Smita Sharma, final comment from you on beyond the optics, what would you ideally like to see come out of this visit?
Well, I'm too small a fry to really like to see something out of this visit, but I think, I guess it should not come across as a visit where India is the one that's only giving and there's no take in this relationship. And also, at the end of the day, when there's so much of focus and stress on shared values, these shared values should not become about majoritarianism or about being dismissive about the fourth estate in a democracy, which is the press. And one can only hope, as a journalist personally, I think there are enough backroom stories for us to take and write and report about.
Yes, absolutely. I'm with you on that one. All right. Thanks all of you for joining us in this conversation. But we'll, of course, be tracking all of the developments as the days come closer, and especially on the 2 days that President Trump and the rest of his family is in India. And on that note, that's a wrap on this edition of The Last Word. Thanks so much for watching. Stay tuned tomorrow now.